When people talk about revolutions, they often picture protests, battles, or political uprisings. But sometimes a revolution begins quietly, in the soil, in the fields, and in the hearts of people who've had enough of being controlled by others. That's exactly what's happening across Africa right now, where a massive $9 billion rice pact is shaking the foundations of global finance and, more importantly, challenging the long-standing grip of the International Monetary Fund. For decades, the IMF has been the go-to lifeline for African nations struggling with debt, inflation, and economic instability. But that lifeline often came with invisible chains, loans tied to harsh conditions, policies that benefited foreign investors more than local farmers, and a cycle of dependency that seemed impossible to break. Africa's new Rice Pact could change all of that. This isn't just about food, it's about power, independence, and the right to grow on one's own terms. At its core, the pact aims to turn Africa into a self-sustaining powerhouse of rice production. For a continent that spends billions of dollars every year importing food, especially rice from Asia, this project feels like a breath of fresh air. Imagine millions of acres of fertile African land being used not for export cash crops, but for feeding the continent's own people. Imagine farmers being given the tools, training, and technology to produce enough food to not only meet demand, but to export it to neighboring regions. This is more than just an agricultural plan. It's an economic awakening. For years, African nations have been told that they need external financial help to survive. But now, they're starting to realize they've had everything they needed all along: natural resources, skilled hands, and the drive to build something lasting. The Rice Pact is being seen as one of the most ambitious cooperative efforts in Africa's modern history. Countries are joining forces, pooling resources, and focusing on collective strength instead of competition. It's Africa saying, "We can do this ourselves." And that message is making waves far beyond the continent. The IMF and other global financial institutions are watching closely, because if this pact succeeds, it could completely rewrite how developing nations approach economic growth. Think about it. If Africa can meet its food needs and even profit from agricultural exports, why would it need to borrow money under strict conditions? Why would it accept debt traps disguised as aid? The truth is, food is power. Control over food means control over people. For decades, Africa's dependence on imported food has kept it vulnerable to price changes, global supply shocks, and political pressure. But the Rice Pact flips that dynamic entirely. By investing in its own agriculture, Africa is taking back its power. The deal isn't just about planting seeds in the ground. It's about planting seeds of independence. Farmers across countries like Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Senegal are seeing new opportunities open up. Modern irrigation systems are being introduced, training programs are teaching advanced cultivation techniques, and youth are being encouraged to take up agriculture as a real, profitable career path. There's a sense of pride returning to the land. And when people take pride in feeding their own, they begin to see their nation differently. They begin to believe in its future. Critics might say it's overly ambitious. Some believe that Africa still lacks the infrastructure to handle such a massive transformation. But optimism on the ground feels different. There's a sense of unity building, a belief that this is the moment to break free from the old narrative that Africa must always be helped. Because in truth, the world has been profiting off Africa's struggles for generations. From raw materials to cheap labor, from oil to cocoa, the continent's wealth has always been extracted and sold elsewhere. But with food, with rice, something so essential, so basic, the story could finally change. This pact could be the first domino in a chain reaction leading to true economic sovereignty. The implications reach far beyond agriculture. If Africa becomes self-reliant in food, it reduces inflation pressure, strengthens local currencies, and creates millions of jobs. With stronger economies, nations won't need IMF loans to stabilize themselves. They'll have internal stability, supported by real production instead of external credit. That's the kind of transformation that scares traditional financial powers. But for the people of Africa, it's the kind of transformation they've been waiting for. In villages and towns, conversations about farming are no longer just about survival. They're about potential. They're about technology, exports, and markets. African entrepreneurs are developing AI-driven agricultural tools, satellite imaging for soil analysis, and blockchain systems for trade transparency. It's innovation meeting tradition, the young generation linking arms with the old to build something sustainable. And while global analysts talk about interest rates and GDP forecasts, farmers in the fields talk about harvests, community, and dignity. That's the human side of this story. The Rice Pact isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, it's hope in motion. It's a mother who won't have to worry about food prices doubling next month. It is a young man who sees a future in farming instead of fleeing abroad in search of opportunity. It is a continent realizing that the power to shape its destiny lies not in boardrooms in Washington or Brussels, but in its own soil. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this entire movement is how naturally it has formed. Africa isn't trying to isolate itself from the world. It's simply standing up to say, we can be equal partners now. This $9 billion deal is a symbol of confidence, of self-belief. It is proof that development doesn't always have to start with a loan. It can start with a seed. When that seed is nurtured by faith, unity, and hard work, it grows into something unstoppable. The world might not be ready for an Africa that stands tall without borrowing, but Africa is ready for it. And once that happens, no institution, no fund, no foreign power will ever control its destiny again. If you believe Africa deserves to rise on its own terms, to stand tall without foreign control, then this is your moment to be part of that vision. Subscribe now to stay informed about the powerful changes reshaping our world. Like and share this video to spread awareness about Africa's journey toward independence. And please, drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters in this movement for real freedom and economic strength. Thanks for watching.